Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Amplifying Indie Voices in Indie Bookstores, a session that was presented at Winter Institute 2025 in Denver, Colorado.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel on Amplifying Indie Voices in Indie Stores. I'm Amy Williams. I am the head of merchandising, the product buying team at Ingram, and I am your moderator today. So I've got a lovely group of panelists here, and we're going to kick it off and let each of them introduce themselves, tell where they are, and sort of what brings them to being on this panel. So we're going to start here with Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Caitlin O'Neill. I'm a co-owner at Tropes and Trifles, which is a romance specialist bookstore in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We opened in April of last year. So we're just coming up on our first year anniversary. So I'm kind of bringing the perspective of early days of stocking indie authors and how we've developed how we stock indie authors over the course of the past year. Prior to opening Tropes and Trifles, I was also a book publicist for small presses. And I'm also a published translator who has been published through two small presses. So I feel like small presses have kind of raised me in this industry before I sidestepped into more of the indie pubbed romance world that I now inhabit.
All right. Love the name of your store. That's a good name.
Thank you.
Paul Hansen, one of the co-owners of Village Books and Paper Dreams. We have two locations in Bellingham, Washington and Linden, Washington. We've got our main store is the bookstore is about 10,000 square feet and 3 stories. Our second location is 3,500 square feet. And the population of Bellingham is about 100,000. And the reason I say that is because there's other stores that are larger in larger metropolitan areas that I think suffer from a lot of fatigue from working with independently published authors. I'm an author as well and have gone through the self-publishing process myself and wanted to learn more about it. And in doing so, we've set up, we really pride ourselves on our writing community, our local writing community, with writing workshops and classes and a writers conference and publishing services and lots of stuff that we'll talk about later. But we really, we work hard on our writing community. That's a cornerstone of what we do.
Great. I am Marty Schoenleber. I am the senior manager for Ingram Spark Distribution, which is Ingram's award-winning self-publishing platform. I'm going to adjust this like 1,000 times. And I'm also a self-publisher and a self-publishing advocate. I've been self-publishing since about 2008. I've used I think every major platform to self-publish my books over the years. So a lot of experience with that. And of course, always want to see indie authors excelling and finding market.
So, my name is Amanda. Whoa. That was really loud. My name is Amanda. I own the Last Chapter Bookshop in Chicago. We are also a romance-only bookstore. Prior to this, I worked in indie-specific romance, like author marketing and like kind of brand management, publishing and stuff like that. The Last Chapter has been open for almost 2 years. We are also going to be expanding within this year, opening up another location in Nashville, Tennessee, which I'm very excited about. We pride ourselves on indie romance. When we first opened back in 2023, we were 70% indie, 30% traditional. Obviously, our market has changed so much with all of these amazing authors getting picked up and everything like that. But independently published authors is something I'm very passionate about, especially within the romance space.
Thank you all. So to start, I wanted to share a little bit of data. So according to the last Valker data, from, I believe this came out in 2020. It came out last year, but it was for 2023. Self-published titles were 7.2% up over 2022, topping 2.6 million titles. So it's a huge segment, and there are a number of reasons that an author might choose to pursue the self-publishing path versus a more traditional path. So I thought to just kind of lay the framework and a little background here, maybe Marty could start and then anyone chime in on some of the reasons that authors choose this path, and the benefits that it brings?
Yeah, I think there's probably as many answers to that question as there are people who have stories to tell.
2.6 million.
Yeah, there's 2.6 million different reasons. We have a hashtag that we use at Ingram Spark, which is hashtag why I publish, which would be a good one to follow. Just a little hot tip. And I just earlier today, I was like, I should take a look and see, because I knew this was your first question. And I should take a look and see what some of the most recent ones were. And the top one that we had pushed out was, I self-published because I wanted to see my kids have heroes that look like them in their stories. The second answer was, I needed to talk about my hot flashes. The reasons are all over the place, but from an industry perspective, it's fast. There's no gatekeeping. There's incredible services and platforms out there. There's great author services platforms that can deliver you professional quality editing and cover design, get you great marketing. So the barrier to entry is very low. And ultimately, when people have stories to tell, they really want to get it out. And so speed and ease as the platforms get better and better is a major part of it. Finances is a major part of it. A lot of it is free. And maybe the last thing that I would say from an industry side is I think self-publishing for a long time has kind of been viewed as this. Self-published books are the books that couldn't find an agent, or they're the slush pile for publishers that don't want that content. And I think that's a misconception of certainly where the industry is now. 2.6 million titles. Of course, they're not all created equally. But a lot of times self-published authors use the self-publishing mechanism to get their names out there, and they build audiences on their own. And then they move to traditional houses. Some of them have so much success on their own independently that they would never dream of going to a traditional house. So a lot of times I think even when you're a traditional press and you're acquiring an author, you might consider things like their social media size, or you might consider things like how many books they've already previously published. Right? A self-published author is going to develop those things, and even a traditionally published author is going to have to develop those things on their own. So you would have, I think we need as, actually, could we do like a show of hands? Who's like a publisher and who's a bookseller? Publisher first.
Publishers? Any publishers in here?
Okay. And then who's a bookseller? Okay.
Any authors?
Okay.
Awesome.
So as a bookseller, how you think about self-published authors is going to be a mix of like the irritation of people walking into your store with like this, this book. Hey, can you put this on your shelf for me? And then this desire to meet and service a community that is fiercely independent, right? So yeah, the reasons are all of them.
But there's, in 2.6 million, there's good stuff there. Anybody else want to chime in on that question, or we'll keep moving?
We can probably, that's a question that we ask authors when they come to us as well. When we have, so we have publishing services, and authors often come to us and say, I want to publish a book. What do I do? And we're acutely aware that having gone through this process, that every point is something new for them. And so we meet them where they are and ask them, what are your goals for it? And also try to give them teach them to fish and not just give them fish. So, we ask that question, what do you want what's your goals? And then we try to guide them on the right way.
Excellent. So I think, by show of hands, the majority in here are booksellers. And so I think everyone here understands that, both time and oftentimes your shelf space are at a premium. And when we think about 2+ million self-published titles, combing through a list of those one by one is a non-starter. So I have a series of questions around this, but I kind of want to start with what resources have you used in your businesses to find sort of the hidden gems? or what resources are out there that you know of? And we'll start here, Caitlin.
Yeah, I adore this question because there's so many ways to learn about indie authors who are new to you or who are debut indie authors. One of the things that we love is to follow people on social. So whether your social media of choice, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, less so, Book Talk, whatever, like make sure you're following influencers who read widely and diversely. Book Talk is bigger than Fourth Wing. Find the people who are reading indie and reading like adventurously in the indie space, because they're going to make really excellent recommendations. But also find other booksellers, follow other bookstores, follow the romance bookstores are all like obnoxiously online. Like follow us. We post nonstop about the indie authors that we're bringing to the shelves. And honestly, if you look into it, we'll also show you how they're selling, because we post our restocks as well. But also like touch base with like other bookstore owners, like ask them what indies they're stocking, and how they're doing. And then also the last one is customers. Our customers are always very vocal about which indie authors they think belong on our shelves. And you know what? We listen to them and we take notes and we look up whether there are editions that we are able to source through Ingram. And, you know, if we're not able to bring it into the store right at that second, then we'll make note of it and kind of like how it would fit in the shelf at a future date.
Paul?
I confess that we don't try to source independently published authors. We mostly focus on our local authors and supporting them because there's a built-in audience there with the local authors. That said, we do, and we don't, I was going to say troll, but that's not a good word. We don't monitor social media to try to fish for them because we have enough on our shelves already.
You've kind of made a name and they're coming to you.
Right, they're coming to us. So I was actually perplexed by this answer and curious what everybody else is doing.
Okay, well then we're going to move on. Yeah, Amanda.
I think for us, it's definitely like word of mouth and customer suggestions. Me personally, like as a reader, for every trad book I read 3 indie books, and that's kind of always been my mindset with it. Because I think that especially when you're trying to find like own voices and like just certain topics, I tend to just find them a lot more in and within indie authors. So I really try to prioritize that in my own reading. I am also very much online social media wise. So I stalk everybody, especially if I hear it from an author from a customer. I will go on deep dives at 3 a.m. and figure out their entire lore as an author and who they are and what they push out. And then part of our business is we also do a lot of like signings and like conventions and stuff. So I always just take note of who's at these conventions, who's constantly being asked back, how their lines are doing, like what people are whispering about them. But honestly, I just try to stay as informed as possible. But I definitely also stalk other romance bookstores and I'm like, who's that author? And if I constantly see them reposting them, like in my head, it's like a light bulb that's like, this is someone you need to look into.
Excellent. Marty, from the inside, do you have anything to add?
I'm taking notes and listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So my next question is,
She has a question.
Oh.
Do you think location matters?
Sorry. Yes.
Because it's recorded.
Right.
And if you ask the questions and we can transcribe it. Okay, thank you. Do you think location matters for, like, let's say a Chicago store compared to California? Do you think location matters in how long those books stay on your shelves or who comes to get them?
Being a general bookstore, I think we have to, excuse me, yes, it does matter. It matters for every book. And we, just like with every author who comes in the door, we treat that individually, just like any book we're going through a catalog from traditional publishers. We have to look at all the different factors and local market. If there's local connections, that obviously would make more of a difference. There are authors in the store, even if they don't sell as well as would merit keeping them on the shelf, we'll still keep them on the shelf.
I can actually second that too. We have a section in our store that's labeled Minnesota Connections. And we stock indie authors in there who are local to us that maybe a store on the West Coast wouldn't stock, just because the author's community is not there to buy the book. So that might influence. We have others that, are nationally recognized. So
thank you.
Oh, I was also going to suggest for other ways to identify indie authors who are doing well is I just go to Ingram and I sort by demand. That's how I found most of them. Is Ingram has a great feature, sort by demand, and you find all these authors. I look through it, I see something called Haunting Adeline. I'm like, okay, well, that's the number one right now. So I'll get that. And suddenly a bunch of people are coming into my store looking for it. And maybe I'm selling rape porn now in my store, but it definitely sells. So that's a bonus. So thanks, Ingram, for that. And the other thing I was going to say is, Book Talk, obviously. I mean, just see what the biggest trends are in Book Talk. Although my husband doesn't want me to use it anymore because I keep waking him up in the middle of the night with cat videos and some Polish guy moonwalking. So
excellent. Thank you. And we're going to continue on the panel and then open it up for Q&A. These are great. This is really great discussion. So keep your thoughts. So one question is, how do you prefer indie authors to come into your store? Is there, how do you like to receive information about them?
Please do not call me. I mean that with so much love. But when we have authors that will call me, and I think they have a little light bulb that's like, she's so busy right now, and I want to take 15 minutes of her time. And also too, it's just like when you call, by the time I get to the end of my day, it's fully left my brain. So I always just encourage people to just email us, or just email or even mail, just kind of one-sheeters about them, their books and stuff like that. You absolutely do not have to send me an ARC. I understand printing's expensive and all of that, but just like a quick one-sheeter about you. But, I've gotten an email that was a PDF of 47 pages about the book, and that is just a bit to digest. So a one-sheeter, emails, but don't call me. It really stresses me out.
How do you convey this information though out to authors? Is it on your website?
Yeah, it's on our website and then on our social media as well. So whenever anyone DMs or anything like that, or they even stop in, we always have kind of a business card to pass them, saying, hey, email us here. And if they call, I kind of try to catch them at the beginning and be like, I'm so sorry, it's so busy right now, but if you email me at I will take a look at it as soon as I can.
Paul?
So we're very protective of our events coordinators and of our publishing services because they're short on time. So on our website, you've got the Reader's Corner, which has all the stuff for readers. And then you have the Writer's Corner that includes all of the things for writers. And it says, so you want to publish a book? And you go into that. So if anybody cold calls us or comes into the store, we say, first, we start with intention. Our intention is to support them and give appreciation for their baby. Mm-hmm. Because no matter what they're bringing to us, we know that they spent a hell of a long time doing it. And we grill that into all of our staff, and it's baked in that we honor the process that they've gone through. And then our job is to treat them, we're in the role of mentors to try to onboard them into this world and make it a friendly place. So we treat them with professionalism. We have good systems in place. We pay them on time, and we expect the same in return. And if they fall down, we figure it's out of ignorance. But then we route them through our website, and it has questions that they fill in. And it's all the questions that we would have in a consultation, but it saves us time. So we go through that whole process and then make a book by appointment.
Smart. Caitlin?
We have a form on our website. So if you go to our website, tropesandtrifles.com, up at the top under contact, there's a drop down that says for authors, and it leads directly to a form that requires that they give us all of the information that we need to be able to find their book and figure out whether it's a good fit for our store. We don't promise to stock it, but it's a really good way for us to keep all of the information contained, and it feeds directly into one of our email accounts where we can file it under a label in order to, I'm looking at Lauren right now, my co-owner, who quarterly goes through all of the submissions that we receive. And then we reach out to the authors who we do decide to stock. And we actually never reach out. It says on our page that we will only be in contact with you if we decide to stock your book. because that may always change. If it's a no today, it might be a yes tomorrow, depending on how trends shift. We also in there have a specification about, are you local to Minnesota or the upper Midwest? And that helps us prioritize local authors. I cannot claim full credit for this form. We relied on other romance bookstores who came before us. We use that as a basis, as a template, but we tailored it to our own needs. And so I would say, if you are being overwhelmed by indie authors coming in and you're not sure how to respond to them graciously on the spot, or if your staff is feeling pressured to respond to them without having the authority to actually make that decision, having a form is a really great way to direct them to something that they can fill out. And your staff can also point to it to take some of the heat off of themselves in that moment as well.
Yeah, we're happy to, I won't speak for you guys. You can come to our website and take anything you want from it.
Same.
Excellent resource here. So I know, Paul, you have sort of an in-store publishing program. Can you tell us a little about that and how it works? So it's, a step beyond having a form and submitting. What all do you provide?
Sure. So we have both publishing services when somebody comes in and they want to publish their book, and everyone has a different journey. So we meet them where they are and try to meet their goals. We can either publish locally if they just want a little vanity press that they're going to do, or we route most of our authors through Ingram Spark, and especially the ones who want national distribution. I can't say. We used to have the espresso book machine, actually. And I do not miss the smell of hot glue in the morning. We were happy when that was gone, because mostly, not just technology, but we couldn't distribute it all ourselves. So being able to do this through Ingram Spark was such a game changer. And they've been extremely wonderful to work with. We also have our own imprint called Chuck and Nut Editions, and we publish 2 or 3 books a year that are usually local, hyper-local. Some have a wider appeal, but that's our own publishing. And we kept having to say, I don't know, when people said, so I have something ready, but I need an editor or I need a book designer. We would say, oh, okay, well, come back to us when you've done this. So another thing we've done is start a local network and pool of freelancers for all of the things they need to be able to create their book. And then we match them together. And as they're waiting for us to publish the book and go and hit go and get the ISBN and all the good stuff, meanwhile, they're working behind the scenes with these freelancers and getting it all ready for prime time. So we found a really good process for that.
Excellent.
That's so cool.
Sounds like a good model.
Our publishing director is here as well. If you see Chloe Hovind, she'd be glad to talk to you by appointment.
Fill out the form. So there seems to be at least 2 main models, I believe, when it comes to carrying, stocking indie books. So there's the traditional buy, sell, return, and also consignment. If we'll start, Amanda, over on your side and work our way here. Is there a model that you use primarily, and tell us a little about it?
Yeah. When I first started, I went the traditional route just because I couldn't get a good grasp on consignment myself. I asked a bunch of different booksellers and I got different answers. So it was kind of hard for me to figure out. So we did the traditional model, but this year we did start doing consignment just because I think, especially just within romance, a lot of authors are if you buy the book direct from me, they'll include free swag, they'll sign it, all the extra nitty gritty things that romance readers love. But it's something I do want to go deeper down to, especially with consignment. I think it's a great model when it works and when you are working with authors and their work that you know and can trust and have vetted yourself. But for new authors that I'm kind of trying on, or new authors that I've read personally but are new to the store, I do just the traditional route. But after I see that they are consistently selling, that we have a good repertoire, I am going to start reaching out to the author direct to see if consignment is something that they're interested in.
A buy, sell, either buying from a wholesaler or buying and paying, upfront.
Could you please repeat your question into the mic? Or if you, Amy, if you could just.
Yes. So she asked to clarify what traditional, like a more traditional purchasing route was. So.
We tailor it to the book. If it's an author who's going to be their first interaction with us is doing an event, then we might do an event only consignment with them, trying it on for size. This might be the little, what's another way to do things, I would love a show of hands if anybody else does this, because there's both returnable and non-returnable for Ingram Spark. And whenever we are working with an author who's doing an event with us that's available through Ingram Spark on demand, and it's returnable, we actually try to work with them ahead of time and figure out what's a sweet spot for a number of books to bring in for the event, because we want enough to be able to sell and make a good display. But we also don't want to order 100. When we're going to return 90 that they're going to get charged for. So we actually offer them the option of, we're going to order these books in, and what doesn't sell, we can sell to you directly at cost, so that you can go away with these and use them at other events. So that's.
Anybody else doing anything like that? Yes.
Yeah, good.
Go ahead. Okay. Caitlin?
That's so smart. We just do the traditional buy, sell, return. That is what has been working for us. It did have the downside that for the first just 6 months, I would say we were very hesitant with non-returnable items until we kind of got our feet under us, figured out what was selling, what kinds of books had a chance to really be successful in our store. And that's when we started dipping our toes into the non-returnable. And now we do stock a fair number of non-returnable titles, not in huge quantities. And we've only just gotten to the point of doing events with authors whose books are non-returnable. I'm not entirely confident that we have a good system for that yet. We're doing it. But I would love to chat more, Paul.
Excellent. So we've got 2 romance up here, Paul general, and Marty kind of touches everything.
I have a romantic soul.
You have a romantic soul. But are there any other categories, or, Paul, you mentioned you're primarily working with local authors. Mm-hmm. Anything else in the sort of category or local versus national space that would be helpful to other indies trying to get into the business?
You mean for authors coming to us?
Yeah, no. Are there particular categories that lend themselves to? I mean, romance is a obvious one that self-publishing falls into, or that you're finding. So beyond kind of what you guys have already talked about, are there any other categories, or are you finding anything regional that is helpful?
It's hard for me to separate those out because we have so many different pathways. For the consignment authors, it's if they're local, we carry them, unless there's something really reprehensible or it doesn't have a spine or something. For our publishing services, the same thing. For our own imprint, the ones that we have the best success with, and by success I mean both short term with the big splash, and also long term. So it's not just a splash. It just is something that we sell perennially. It is the local books, local history, local interest, local photography, local children's books with a local angle. Am I saying local enough? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Local. Anyone else have anything? I mean, so for romance, are you doing like romance fantasy, romance mystery, romance, like categories?
So speaking of so we organize our store by subgenre, since we only have one genre, so to speak. I was running through the numbers prior to this panel, and our sections that have the highest percentage of self-pubbed titles in them are erotica and dark romance. That's really where, you mentioned Haunting Adeline, like the dark romance space is really replete with indie pubbed authors because publishers weren't publishing them. That has changed as they've proven how popular they are. So those are our to like most populated sections with indie titles. However, our highest selling indie titles are in the contemporary section. And I would also say that our local author section also has a higher percentage of indie pub titles just because we're making the effort to carry more of the self-pubbed, indie pubbed authors who are local to the store.
That's right.
For us, our BIPOC and our queer section is very big in our indie voices. And that's just because we really just try to be very intentional of making sure that everyone, as much as possible, is represented in our store within romance. I would say also our dark romance section is pretty big for indie titles. And that's honestly due to me because that's just what I read. So I always just throw them in there. Our contemporary, it's mixed now since so many authors have gone hybrid. But I mean, I think if someone's like wanting to get into like indie romance, start with what you know. And because as a reader and as a bookseller, I can tell when someone's heart's in the book and when their heart's not in the book. So start with what you know instead of trying to just write what's most popular.
Marty?
Can I respond to that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love your answers. Indie publishing is so big, right? So there are top indie author titles across every genre and subgenre. You probably just don't know that that's what they are, right? Like a lot of them don't want to be thought of as self-publishers. A lot of them, it's their only product they'll ever make. Like it's a one-time thing for them. But they might have a cookbook that is, old recipes and they've got a great social following and it somehow hits in the top 50 cookbooks. It happens all the time. I would guess probably at any given moment, if you were to look at the top 100 books in any genre, you're going to find 10, 15% of them are self-published. It's all around us, right? Like there's so much of that content. And so I think it's cool to hear you guys talk about how you find them and even how the attitudes that you bring towards engaging with the indie authors themselves. I guess that's my comment is that, there are certainly sweet spots, like dark romance, right? Like self-publishing is always going to be innovative because there's no risk, right? So like your traditional publishers are not going to start doing these weird crossover triple genre books where it's like, enemies to lovers, ogres and princesses, right? Like that doesn't.
I'm shelved in 3 places. That'll be so
right, and that's what causes it, right? So it's like, what is this? What's the who's the target audience for this? I'm never going to publish this. Indie authors just write what they want to write, and then they end up finding an audience, and so you're always going to have those sort of spaces where indie excels kind of naturally because it's an innovative, creative group of people. And then they find readers that also love that stuff and want to share it and bring it into their store.
Excellent. So essentially what I'm hearing is category wise, if you want to support indie authors, self-published authors, no matter the category, you're going to be able to find some good content, good books.
Don't be afraid of unrecognized imprints, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Paul, you were going to chime. Were you going to chime? No. Okay. We'll carry on. So it sounds like I really love all the positivity and the engagement that you're talking about with indie authors, but there are challenges, I'm sure, in dealing with indie authors. And Paul, you've alluded to them a little bit, and sounds like you guys have a very gracious approach, which makes complete sense. But I just thought if each of you could talk sort of about a potential or a challenge you've encountered, how you overcame that so that you could get past and continue to support this important category.
Yeah. I think for me, I wrote it down. Yeah. I think it's one, managing the author's expectations and also like the lack of marketing on the author's part. I think that a lot of like authors will come to me and they have this amazing book and I'm like, hell yeah, like I love this book, let's do it. But then you go on their like social media and they're not actually promoting that the book can be bought at my bookstore, or they're not like doing their own marketing for the book. So it's like, I'm beating a dead horse. Like, you guys should read this. They're like, well, the author hasn't posted in 2 years. And I'm like, Right. But like the book is still really great. So I think it's like the no effort and like marketing on like the author's part, which I also need to be better as a bookseller to manage those expectations of being like, this is what you have to do to be successful having your book here and for us to continuously rebuy it. And I think just the author expectation of, you know, some authors will come to me and be like, so are you going to buy 50 copies of my book and keep it in stock at all times, but I'm not actually going to promote to anyone that they can get it here, but I'll always promote Amazon. And it's like, so if you aren't supporting me, how am I supposed to support you? So I think it's just a little bit of like those expectations, but also not forcing them, but I think requiring them to also put in as much effort as I am to sell their book.
Marty, do you have anything to chime in here? I'm sure you.
Yeah, I do. I think that is so the right approach, right? You are, and will always be the more experienced person in that transaction. So when I talk to booksellers, I think the way that we should view ourselves as booksellers is to think of ourselves as part of the education pipeline, right? Indie authors deserve to be fairly represented. But it's hard, and not all the books are equal, and not all the authors are going to do things that are mutually beneficial. But I think if you view yourself and doing like what Paul was saying, creating resources, creating forums, Caitlin, right? Like those sorts of things to create a pathway for them. Like you are gatekeepers. So you have the keys to the gate, right? And so making a way for them to walk through the path is so important. So that then they can turn around and do things that are beneficial to the store and for their experience. But being the person who's willing to take on a little bit of the education is so critical.
Paul?
I like what you said about the gatekeepers, but also you have the keys to the gate, because when somebody comes to us to consign a book with us, we don't just look at it as that transaction of bringing the book aboard. We actually give them the options and the opportunities to also participate in our featured local author display, which is right on the main floor on a big pillar right in the store. And they pay $25 to have that prime placement. It's like co-op for 2 months. And they see time and time again, if they balk, $25, that's a lot. So, well, it's usually worth it. If it's not worth it, don't do it again. They usually come back and they want to do it again because they find that it's not hidden on the shelf. And also, as one of our authors, they can buy our events package. And so they can pay the co-op to be a part of an events package. It's not cost prohibitive. We're of the size that we can just charge a meager amount compared to some other larger stores in larger metropolitan areas. But it gives that chance for them to be able to promote. And it's at every step, it's an educational opportunity, from going to their website and saying, don't just link to Amazon, to anything else. But yeah, and not treating it like they're a burden to us or an inconvenience. It's trying to remind yourself that of every time. And you have to do it on every transaction. And I put myself in the shoes when I was a first-time homeowner and I wanted to build a fence. I didn't know the woods. I didn't know the tools. I didn't know anything. And I went into a hardware store and he treated me like I was a hardware expert. And I just got intimidated and went away and went somewhere else. And I remember that experience.
Excellent. Caitlin?
I would say one of the challenges is actually not about the authors themselves. It's about learning about the books as they come out and their release date, and accepting that the release timelines of indie books are very different from the release timelines of traditionally published books. They, as Marty already mentioned, they move much faster, which makes it hard to keep up sometimes. And sometimes you miss a release date and you're like, oh, shoot, we should have had that book.
Especially if it has multiple release dates.
Yeah. Yes. Also. So, part of it is an author will reach out to me, and they'll want to do an event and their book comes out in 2 weeks. And And first of all, I know that that book is not going to be available in that 2 weeks. It's going to be available in maybe 3 weeks, but it'll release in 2 weeks, but it won't get to me for another 3 weeks. But also like just their sense of timeline is much shortened compared to like the publicity timeline that a store needs to like ramp up to an event to make it successful. So like explaining things like that, timelines, the challenge is like getting far enough ahead of the release in order to put together like a really interesting event for us. We don't do events for very many of our books,
to start, I would just to dovetail on that a little bit, just let them know your intention of, we want this to be a good event for you.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 week lead time will not be a success. And in order for this to be a success, this is what we found with our experience that you're paying us for, is to do this. Give us the lead time for marketing.
Just to chime on that, what we've started doing with some indie authors is we do an event post-release, which doesn't have as much like, it's not the big bang. It's not a big release party on the day. But like Caitlin said, like I can order a book and sometimes it might take a few weeks past release. So when indie authors like kind of contact us for events, I take a look at like when their book's releasing, and then I usually try to do it like a month or so out. If I can get it quicker and they're like, it's already up on Ingram, I'm like, you know what you're doing. I love that. And we can move it closer, but just to give us both time and also just like the marketing time and just to make sure it runs smoothly, we'll push it out way after. It's still a great event, especially if you're marketing it well before release and your local community can know like, I might not get that book the day of, but I know I'm going to get it eventually and I'm going to get it signed.
I would also just add on to that. Marty, you mentioned like booksellers are the gatekeepers and we will always know more. We will always know more about getting the book into the store. But we have done some events and stalked some authors who have been indie pubbing for years. They are like maestros at this point. They know so much more about that process than I will ever know. And I'm just like in awe of all of the knowledge that they have accrued about this. But also when they come to set, like when we are like, hey, we'd like to do an event, they're like, I've never done a bookstore event. Like, what does that entail? Right. So it's like, it's a give and take. Like, we're knowledge sharing.
I love that. So before we'll just conclude here in a minute and open up to audience questions. But so you guys have given so much great advice. But if there's either one last piece of advice for a bookseller sitting out here who hasn't gotten into the indie author business, or share a sort of a success story, something that you've done with an indie author that was really impactful. Okay.
Read them. Like, start reading indie authors. Find the ones you like. Find ones that you would like to cheerlead for.
I love seeing how many people are in this room. And I think actually it starts with attitude, and even the mere name of this session, Amplifying Indie Voices, rather than other panels I've been on, which is dealing with self-published authors. So start with your intent and your language. And that's my advice.
Awesome. Marty?
I would say, don't give up on always seeking new ways of discoverability. Mm-hmm. Don't just find, the couple easy ways of finding upcoming releases and popular titles and waiting for your reps to come visit you and think that that's good enough. And it's work. There's a lot of titles, it's work, but it's worth it. And you support really valuable groups of people that are underserved. Seek out places where you can discover indie authors. There's a lot of good ones. The IBPA is great. Follow Ingram Spark on social.
I was going to say, I bet Marty has some recommendations.
We post a ton of great content, fascinating publishers. There's so many good options, but you have to seek it out.
I'd say just be intentional. I think like with anything in life, if you put your mind to it, you can make it happen. And if you are just new to the indie space and you don't know where to start, pick a topic you like and explore from there. Like I will go into Ingram and I will type in fantasy romance and I'm just like, what do we got going on today? So I think just start with the topics you like, start from there. I know my Ingram rep, shout out to Nancy. I love you, girl. I will always kind of come to her too and just ask for things. Or just even ask around, start searching. But like kind of everyone said, just be really intentional with it and read them, love them, promote them.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. We want to open it up to audience questions. Yeah. This is for Paul, something you mentioned about co-op and your events package. Are you saying that for certain authors, you ask them for a fee to host an event, or can you speak a little bit more about that?
Sure. And it depends on if they go through our publishing track, then we don't charge for those things. It's a part of the package of going through our publishing services. If they just come to us with consignment, first of all, we have a $25 stocking fee. That's just the process of going through a very labor-intensive process. It also covers the shipping. If we need to return it to them, then we can just ship the books back to them. We have a saying in our store called "skin in the game." It's not enough to necessarily be an income generator, but it's enough to show that there's an investment from the author that they're invested in this and they believe in it. And this isn't a free service to them. And I actually forget the exact numbers that we have for the different things. I think the flat is $25 to be on that for 2 months. That's not much. For an event, it's $65, I think. But yeah, and that covers the publicity that we do and all of the people hours. And if we need to frame it and say we get that kind of co-op from traditional publishers, that's a way to also give some education about the publishing industry.
Thanks. From Roundabout Books in Bend, Oregon. Curious, 2 questions. The first one is, first of all, I love, Paul, that you're doing these extra services that gives, because this is kind of my question. You're talking about setting expectations, right? Have any of you created like a gives and gets list or guidance on what we want you as the author? Here's what we're going to do for you. And here's what we expect you to do as well in terms of marketing or whatever. Has anybody created any of those? And if not you, has anybody else created one of those? Because I'd love to see it.
Paul, before you answer, we have one at the Ingram desk.
Yeah.
Here is the show.
I'm going to go get one.
That we made with feedback from Winter Institute last year. And it helps set expectations for publishers. You can co-brand it. There's a downloadable version.
So go to the Ingram desk.
Come get it at the booth.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Okay. And I have one more question and I'll give this back, I promise. The second question was, we find that we try to stock local authors because, again, for the community purpose, but so many of them just do not move. And I'm curious, what kinds of publicity do you do? Like, how do you showcase these titles and really bring them to light for your communities?
Have you ever considered having the author in store?
Yeah, we do Saturdays sometimes where we do author signings. We do Saturday events sometimes where we have authors sitting at different tables in our cafe and people can come in and do author signings of their books. So we do that. And occasionally we will do events as well. Haven't thought of this $65 event package today. I like this one. But yeah, we do some of that.
Good. We also, so our Instagram has a lot of engagement, which we're really lucky for. But when we reach out to an author to let them know that their book is going to be stocked in store, we also include a note encouraging them to come by, sign, post it to their Instagram, and also that we will repost it. So again, it's that give and take. We find that often they come in, they sign, it sells before we can even post it because other people get so excited seeing an author signing a book in the store.
My questions are for Paul and Marty, also about the consulting program. So I know that I think Politics and Prose does something like that as well, called the Opus program, and they just charge a certain fee to consult and kind of help people through that process. That sounds interesting to me. I think for any bookstore, I mean, there's some benefits to that, right? I mean, you get the really passionate authors with a great project that you want to help in your community. You get the people with these horrible book ideas about grief after my hamster died, and you're like, well, if you pay me $250, I want to help you. And then, of course, I'd like to direct people to Ingram and not to Amazon, right? Because I don't want to give the business to Amazon. As a bookstore, I can't order through Amazon at wholesale. So I'd much rather send them to Ingram Spark before they end up at Amazon instead. And they're like, well, why didn't you buy my book from Amazon? Right. I'm like, yeah, that's not how this works. So I'd like to start a consulting program like that. But my question first for Marty there is, does Ingram offer any kind of certification or training for us to become qualified to do this? Because I mean, before I offer that, I want to say, I actually know how Ingram Spark works. Spark can certify that I am sort of an expert in this and can do this for you. And then for Paul, how long approximately is the process if you offer this kind of consulting package? Roughly how many hours go into that? What does that look like?
Yes, we do. There's an Ingram Spark certification process that's online where you can go through educational training and get certified on how to use the platform and how to engage marketing and how to, do better distribution into bookstores and libraries and online retail. And so you can go through that whole process and experience essentially what our most elite publishers go through. And it would do a lot of prep to get you kind of where you would want to be to start your own imprint for your store. I would also say you can make an imprint for your store and make products that you could sell right there and make a lot more, just make really simple products. Or like, there's no reason all of you have the journal that came in your tote bags. That's a Lightning Source printed book. You could have those branded for your store by the end of the week, right? And have, store merch through an imprint that you own. So think about the different kinds of products that you might produce. It doesn't always have to be running an imprint on behalf of the publishers, but yeah, I'll let you respond.
Yeah. I got two different answers for you. One is what everybody can do. It's not $250 for a consultation. And we have our consultations is if somebody wants to book an appointment because they want to publish a book and they want to know more about bookselling and publishing. The first 15 minutes is free. They fill out a form that answers a lot of the questions. So we don't spend that 15 minutes on those things. And then it's $25 an hour after that. It's just, again, skin in the game, and that our time is not free. And we've got a lot of knowledge that we can help to share with you to give you some guidance about where you might want to go. If they're going to sign on and become a publishing client, then they buy the package or get on the waiting list to buy the package. And that's $800. And that includes the ISBNs, the services to get everything uploaded, the access to our freelance pool, all of the services that we have. And by the end of that, they'll have a finished product.
I have two questions. One, thank you. Hi, Sarah Williams at Next Chapter Books in Detroit. When you said that you accept people's book proposals or ideas online through filling out a form, and then you make it back with them if it interests you. So much of whether I can sell a book in my store is regarding the cover as well, the art, the editing. I can't see any of that when someone fills out a form online, but I also don't have time to read all the books people are dropping off. How do you navigate that?
Okay. So we ask for, this is a personal thing for us. We require the book to be available through Ingram. We don't have the bandwidth currently to be able to order individually from every author. So that's kind of a hard line that we have currently. That may change in the future. It may not. But the ISBN gives us a lot of that. It gives us the cover. It gives us the BISAC codes. It gives us all the metadata about the book. It gives us the discount, which is really helpful. It gives us whether it's returnable. But also we have a form at the bottom, or a note at the bottom that says, "Tell us about your book. Please include all relevant marketing copy." And that is a really revealing section. It just is about how they're talking about their book, lets you know how they're thinking about how their book sits on the shelf with other books, how they're seeing it in their mind's eye, like how it fits into the market. If they can talk about it in industry terms. So for us, that's romance. Can they talk about it in terms of tropes? Are they like following traditional conventions for the romance genre? All of that is really helpful for us. And sometimes that section, we're like, I don't think this person has a really good grasp of what their book is. And that in that case, we might opt to not carry it.
For me, I spend once a month going through all of the emails that I get. And I'm going to be honest, I quickly gloss over it. If someone sends me an email and it's not directed towards me, like I've been called like Susan and Amy so many times in my life. But like, I think that it's kind of like what Caitlin said, like, if you're putting in the effort for me to like not only read the blurb, but like you attach the cover, you are showing me how it's like doing for you and stuff, I will take an extra 30 seconds to really dive into it. But if you're sending me an email and it's 2 sentences saying, here's my book, and then it's also an Amazon link with like no other copy, it's just like, if you're not going to put in the effort, this may be pushed off for 6 months. But don't feel bad. I know what my emails look like, so I can imagine what your emails look like. So don't stress yourself out. If it's once a month, if it's once every 3 months, do what works for you and stay firm in that. Because if you tell someone, I'll get to it next week, they will ask. So I think just be very firm and like, you'll get to it when you get to it. But also just if someone's constantly messaging you and they're showing that interest and they're showing that effort, it's someone worth taking more of a look at.
You also, if you have the bandwidth, you can reach out to them and ask for pages. Mm-hmm. They're usually very willing to share. You know, you can request ARCs if you have the bandwidth for that. Yeah. You can do whatever you need to do to make it work.
That's great. And then my follow-up question, I know Marty and I talked about this for a minute yesterday, but just as booksellers as well, so many people in our community come with their Amazon published book and they're so excited and they had a story to tell and that's how they did it. And I have to tell them this doesn't work for our bookstore. And I do tell them about Ingram Spark and I'm really glad to get handouts that I can make that pathway with. But I'm wondering, as a self-published author, what does that look like to have to start over if you want to be considered in the bookstores?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. On the self-published author side, make sure I'm not running long here. On the self-published author side, if you've got files that you can upload to Amazon that would be printable at Amazon, I guarantee that we could print them at Ingram. So our ability to print is like 3 times as good as Amazon's print capacity. We have more trim sizes. We have customized trim sizes. We do more formats. We do dust jackets. We do digital cloth. We have like all of the stuff. So if you've managed to get past the barrier at Amazon, you're good. You can take that same file that you uploaded to Amazon, opt out of all of this, like the forced save, the forced exclusivity that Amazon contracting has, opt out of all of that, and then take your same files, get a new ISBN and put it at Spark.
So Marty, we're talking, not a whole lot of time to have to do that.
No, for the author, they're really not restarting. Yeah. Right. It's just, they need to know that it's an option. And where Amazon in particular, I'm not going to derail it too much, but where Kindle in particular is really problematic for indie authors is there's a lot of exclusivity built into the service agreement. So your ebook is locked in, print book is locked in. That's how you get the little bit, like that's how you get your 25 cents more per copy is they trick you into these exclusivity things. Conversely, on the Ingram side, we lean so much into autonomy for the publishers to really give them as much power as possible.
We have so many clients who are Amazon published refugees and said, how do I get out of this? And to be able to show them an easy off ramp to be able to do that. And something that they don't realize is publishing this way, they can still have their book sold on Amazon. They're not cutting that resource off.
Oh, we have one more over here too. So we grab two. Sorry, we didn't see each other.
That's a big killer, right? Unfortunate.
Okay, my question is about improving relationships between indie authors and indie bookstores. One of the reasons I got interested in carrying more indie authors was seeing a lot of discourse online from indie authors in particular who had really bad taste in their mouth from experiences they had at indie bookstores. And I have a work history of coming from places where they saw it as a big inconvenience to carry consignment or indie authors. And I now have my own store. And so far haven't had to say no to anybody. But it's really just local people coming to me. But so I was wondering what your opinions are on that as far as how do we present ourselves in a better way as far as being supportive of indie authors?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that question. That's kind of been my passion for the past 20 years. I go to these conferences. I go to IBPA. I go to any self-published author conference that I can and try to make that bridge and be an ambassador for independent bookstores and try to save their souls from just going to Amazon. And then the next day I'll hear a bookstore say, I hate self-published authors. So, be an ambassador, because the reason they've gone in droves to Amazon is because they see us not as allies. They see us as not just gatekeepers. They see us as antagonistic and dismissive. And anything we can do to counter that narrative is please.
Excellent.
Thank you.
One more last question.
Hi. I was just going to ask you real quick. This question revolves around, because we get a lot of local authors coming in with their books. And sometimes I don't want to turn them down, but I want to guide them to, our online forum or sending an email instead of coming in with copies, because we kind of have a hard rule where we don't take things on the spot, Yeah. But then authors can sometimes get kind of defensive about their books, and which I totally understand because it's their book. They wrote it. They care about it a lot. I was just wondering if you have any tips about how to kind of talk to them in a way that's de-escalating and kind of diffuses the situation a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
I think it's all in how you say it, not what you say. And I'm really leaning into that lately. But I think just you can never over communicate with your indie author. So I think just really establishing the baseline of love that you wrote this book. Here's how we do it at this bookstore. But if you have questions, please ask us, so that they know that the lines of communication are open, but you are firm in how you do things and that you have processes in place because it is your business and you know what works best for you, just like they know their book and what they want it to be. But communication is key. And I think that I'm leaning into this year is be firm in your baseline of, what works for you and you are the only one who will know what works for you. They don't know how your bookstore works. And if they get defensive about it, I'm always apologetic, and I'll even sometimes explain, we do things X, Y, and Z because of this. And if they still don't get it at that point, then maybe I'm just not the bookstore for them.
Excellent. Thank you, panelists. And as Marty said, there are some resources over at the Ingram Spark table, over in the Ingram section. So stop by, and I'm sure these people would be happy to answer more questions if you have them.
Please evaluate the session in the app. Thank you. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!